is great to be back at dinanddaf with you. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Elana Stein Hain, and what we do here at dinanddaf is we spend about a half an hour conceptualizing an idea, a concept, a principle in halakha through a case study from the daf this week. The case study that we're going to look at is a little bit strange because in the daf this week, we saw kind of the opposite of the general principle. But from the opposite of the general principle, we're going to get to the general principle. The general principle is as follows. If somebody tells me to do something wrong and I do it, I'm still culpable. I can't say, oh, well, that person told me to do it. That person appointed me to do it as their shliach. Ein shaliach לדבר עבירה. We do not say that just following orders is a legitimate way to get out of punishment. You do the wrong thing, you get the punishment. You have to pay the compensation. You're the person who is chayevet. Now, in our daf this week, we actually saw one of the exceptions to that rule. And that is an exception that relates to what you've been learning about this whole time in the seventh parak, which is seventh parak of Bava Kama, in case somebody's just coming in the middle of this, which is a person who steals an animal and then slaughters it or sells it, right? They steal the animal. They owe double, but if they slaughter it or sell it, they owe arba'a v'chamisha. Now, what happens if the person who steals the animal gives the animal to somebody else to slaughter it for them, or gives the animal to somebody else to sell it? It happens to be that this is one of the rare cases where we actually do say that it is the original thief who has to pay dalet v'hei. That's not usually the case, so it's a little bit, we're coming in through the back door for ein shaliach לדבר עבירה, but that is on daf ayin tet amud aleph. It is one of the few exceptions to the rule of ein shaliach לדבר עבירה. But I want to talk about ein shaliach לדבר עבירה, and I want to set a little bit of a background. Number one, I want to point to the fact that ein shaliach לדבר עבירה stands out in stark relief to the general principle, which is that shlucho shel adam kimoto. If somebody appoints a shaliach or a shlicha to do something for them, to accept something for them, to give something on their behalf, we generally say it is as though the person who sent them has done the thing themselves. Now, there may be a conversation about, are there certain things where we say mitzvah bo yoter mibi shlucho, that it's better for the person themselves to do it than to send the shaliach. But the general principle and the default is that if a shaliach or a shlicha does something for you, it is as though you yourself did it. So ein shaliach לדבר עבירה is actually an exception to that rule. And what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time understanding the logic behind ein shaliach לדבר עבירה, even though, as I said, in the case of person A being gonevet and person B being mocheret, we do say yesh shaliach לדבר עבירה. The general principle is ein shaliach לדבר עבירה. So I want to look at the logic that is offered in the Gemara in Kiddushin for ein shaliach לדבר עבירה and think about some of the hashlachot, some of the ramifications of that logic. So I'm going to share my screen. So here's what you had in Bava Kama, ayin chet amud bet to ayin tet amud aleph, telling you that ein shaliach לדבר עבירה doesn't apply in the case of ganav A giving to the slaughterer B. But in Kiddushin ben bet amud bet, in the context of a conversation generally about shlucho shel adam kimoto, we find a backing or an explanation for the din of ein shaliach לדבר עבירה. Let's take a look. And you may notice this source may be familiar to you because it is actually quoting Mishnah that you learned a few weeks ago on Bava Kama nun tet amud bet. Hasholech de be'ira biyad cheresh shotev hakatan, patur midinei adam v'chayav b'dinei shamim. If somebody sends an item that can cause fire in the hands of somebody who is not considered responsible in the eyes of the law because they are either deaf mute or because they are mentally incoherent or because they are a minor, that person who sent them, the sholeach, is not going to have to pay compensation based on the ruling of a human court because they didn't do the damage with the fire directly. They did it indirectly by giving it to someone, but they're going to be chayav b'dinei shamayim. But they are still going to be obligated to pay the damages based on divine law. Now, that's not something that the court can prosecute, but it still indicates some sort of culpability on the part of the shaliach. Now, we gave a shir on this. This was the first shir of dinanddaf. If you want to look that up about dinei shamayim, please feel free to check that out. But it's really the second half of the Mishnah that's going to interest us here, which is shilach biad pikeach, pikeach chayav. If a sholachat sends that fire-causing item in the hands of somebody who is considered completely responsible, an adult, responsible under the eyes of the law, mentally coherent, right? The pikeach is chayav, meaning it's not the sholiach who's chayav to pay the damages. It's their shaliach, because, well, we're about to see. V'amai, why are we saying that the person who was handed the thing that causes fire and then went to do it on someone else's behalf should have to pay the damages? Why don't we say a person's shaliach is like themselves? Maybe the sholiach, maybe the sholachat should be the one who is chayevet to pay the damages. And the Gemara says, no. Shiny hatam to ein shaliach dvar avera. This is different. We say that there is no such thing as a shaliach for a dvar avera. This bikeach who burnt someone's stuff with a fire that they got from a shaliach can't say, I was only doing it because they gave it to me. No, ein shaliach dvar avera, right? Therefore, the bikeach is chayav to pay. And now the logic that the Gemara suggests is what interests me very much. De amrina, because we say, divrei harav v'divrei hatalmid, divrei mi shomim. If you have the instruction of the master, meaning the teacher, and the instruction of a student that contravenes the teacher, who should you be listening to? In other words, it makes perfect sense to say ein shaliach l'dvar avera, because if there is a standing isser, there's a standing prohibition to damage somebody else's property, then if some human being tells you to go against that prohibition, that's who you're listening to. What about listening to God's standing prohibition, right? Divrei harav, divrei talmid, divrei mi shomim, right? Who should you actually be listening to? Now, it is possible that this is not the only explanation for where ein shaliach l'dvar avera comes from. The Gemara in Kedushin actually continues and works off of examples, biblical examples, to try to prove that that's how we know that ein shaliach l'dvar avera. And in fact, it's kind of interesting the way that the Gemara does it, because, you would think that the Gemara would just find like a pasuk somewhere or an example somewhere that proves ein shaliach l'dvar avera, but that's not what the Gemara does first. What the Gemara does first is it finds 3 exceptions in the Torah where yesh shaliach l'dvar avera. One of them is our example of the ganav giving the animal to somebody else to shecht, and says that those 3 are the exceptions that prove the rule. In those situations, yesh shaliach l'dvar avera, everywhere else, ein shaliach l'dvar avera. And only then does the Gemara say, it's also possible that there's an example in Torah that suggests ein shaliach l'dvar avera. It's from a situation where somebody slaughters an animal that's kachim outside of the precincts of the temple, shchutei chutz, and the Gemara says that nefesh is going to get karet, right? Implying only the one who does it, even if somebody else sent them to do it, still doesn't matter. The one who gets punished is the one who actually did it. So it's not clear whether these attempts to find psukim to source ein shaliach l'dvar avera is something that is at odds with this logic that's been offered of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mi shomim, or if maybe the logic of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mi shomim is the logic that is behind the psukim, right? So are these 2 different situations where we say one is saying the only source for ein shaliach l'dvar avera is divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mi shomim, which would imply that if you can find an exceptional case where you wouldn't make the argument divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mi shomim, then you actually wouldn't say ein shaliach l'dvar avera, and we'll actually see a couple cases in a minute. Whereas if you learn it from psukim, maybe it's a gzerat hakatuv, and no matter what, even if you found a situation where the logic of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin wouldn't make sense, you would still say ein shaliach l'dvar avera, right? But it's not clear. It's not clear. I actually want to work within this notion of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin, not because I necessarily think that it's the only way to understand the parameters of ein shaliach l'dvar avera and that the gzeirat hakatuv root doesn't work, but because I actually think it's interesting to consider that maybe divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin is the logic even behind the psukim that are found to try to help us understand as gzeirat hakatuv ein shaliach l'dvar avera. So let's say we work within this logic of there's a master, there's a student, God, human beings. Who should you be listening to? If you're listening to the wrong one, you're culpable, right? But what I want to do is I actually want to think a little bit more about this principle and ask what we can tease out of it, meaning what it can give us in terms of understanding this whole world of ein shaliach l'dvar avera. And so I want to look at two possible situations where we might say, somebody sent a shaliach to do something bad, but I don't think that divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin should apply here, okay? One of these examples and cases is going to be about the shaliach not being able to charge the shaliach. Why didn't you listen to divrei harav? Why did you listen to divrei talmid? And the other is going to be a situation where the mishaleach or the sholeach could not make the argument, divrei harav v'divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin, in order to exempt themselves from having the punishment. Let's take a look. So the first example where it seems that divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin might not apply would be if the shaliach didn't know that what they were doing was wrong. They didn't know. They're an unwitting accomplice, right? You can think of plenty of examples of this kind of thing in regular life, right? You conveniently take advantage of somebody not knowing all of the facts of a situation to enlist their help in continuing to cover your tracks or continuing to ensure that what you're trying to do will come to fruition. And the example that is offered is actually, interestingly enough, an example, I should say the example that's offered by the Rishonim of a case of shogeg, where person A said to person B, do thing X, but person B did not know that thing X was a problem. Do we say ein shaliach l'dvar avera and we still punish person B? Or do we say, well, divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin doesn't really apply here. It's not like we think person B should have known better. Person B didn't know that they were doing a sin. You can't punish them for doing something that they didn't know was problematic. And so the example that's brought by by Tosfot actually is from a Mishnah in Bava Kama, which is on the very same Amud, Ayin Tet Amud Aleph, later on the page, right? It's on the very same Amud as the Gemara that we looked at before or spoke about before about Ganav A, Shochet B being an exception to ein shaliach l'dvar avera. So the Mishnah gives you the following case. Also, Ganav A, somebody B, but let's talk about the somebody B. What happens is I stole an animal and I decided that I was going to be able to launder it. How was I going to launder it? There I am in the Reshut Balim. I am actually on the property with the animal of the animal's original owner. And I see a Kohen and I say, hey, come here. I really want to give you this animal as redemption of my firstborn son. And I want you to take the animal and walk out of here. Brilliant, right? That's our money laundering, animal laundering 101. So if that happens, right, let's say that happens. Do we hold the Kohen responsible for anything there? The Kohen didn't know that I was giving him someone else's animal. Let's assume he doesn't know whose estate we're on. He thinks that the animal is mine. So essentially, he's helping me carry out a theft without knowing it, right? So the Baal Tosfot and Kiddushin Ben Ben Amid Bet essentially say we do not think that this should be ein shaliach l'dvar avera. We do not think that this Kohen should be punished. Lo shayach l'meimar divrei harav v'divrei atalmid divrei mishomin kevan shehu shogeg. In a situation where the would-be shaliach or shlicha is shogeg, they don't know that what they're doing is a problem. They don't know all the facts of what's going on here. It doesn't make sense to say, we're going to slap you with the punishment because you should have listened to God instead of listening to this person. They didn't know they were doing anything that contravenes Torah, right? This is what it sounds like also in the chapter 7 of Bava Kama that you're learning. Dika Amar, which says, somebody who stole a lamb from within its flock, Va'amar leKohen, and said to a Kohen, Tol tzle shehu shali, take this lamb that's mine, o netano leKohen lebchorot beno, or gave it to somebody, gave it to that Kohen and said, I want to redeem my firstborn child with this, v'her'alo b'tzle shel chavero, and showed the Kohen somebody else's lamb, right, to take. Umesik, and the Gemara concludes that immediately when the Kohen takes the animal out of the domain of the original owners, nitchayev haganav b'meshichat haKohen. It's the ganav, it's me, it's the ganav who actually is chayav to pay in that situation, not the Kohen, not my shaliach. The Hiksha Rabbeinu Yitzchak, and Rabbeinu Yitzchak, one of the Balei HaTosfot, asked, he challenged, why should the ganav be obligated to pay for this? We should say there's no shaliach l'dvar avera, so whatever the Kohen did is the Kohen's fault, and he's going to have to pay. Vitzi reads, and he answered, since the Kohen didn't know that this came from theft, it doesn't make any sense to ask the Kohen, why are you listening to this mere mortal who's trying to contravene God's word when it's against God's word? He doesn't know that he's doing anything wrong. And I love, love, love this example because, again, it is a machloket among the Rishonim, whether we should say, no, ein shaliach l'dvar avera still applies here because divrei rav, divrei atalmid, divrei mishomin is not the only reason for ein shaliach l'dvar avera, it's exerat hakatov. But I find this very, very compelling. The suggestion that how could you possibly obligate somebody for doing something that they thought was totally legitimate? And I think it's worth thinking at this point about people who take advantage of other people's, I don't want to say ignorance, because this isn't ignorance. It's just, in this case, the Kohen doesn't know, right? But there's a real question here of exploiting people who only know part of the story, and how we look at those people and say, we're not going to allow them to be exploited by this ganav. And at the same time, I wonder what the threshold would be. At what point would we say the Kohen should have known or should have checked out the situation, right? Meaning, this is a big question in general when we ourselves become accessories to things that may be unjust, wrong, because we don't know what's actually going on. And I think the question of whose responsibility is it to know what's going on? Does that depend more on what's possible to know? Or does that depend more on just in general, with whom do we lay the blame? And it seems right here that it's both a situation where it would be difficult for the Kohen to know, and also we are conditioned to believe a person who says, here, this is mine, right? And we are more comfortable laying the problem and the blame at the ganav's feet. So this would be one of those situations where, because of the logic of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin, we would say, here's a case where you can't use that logic, and therefore we would say, yesh shaliach l'dvar avera. The kohen is just the shaliach of the ganav, and it's the ganav who has to pay. There's another example where divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin may also not be relevant, but it comes from the side of the sholiach or the sholachat. And that is the following. It is possible that the logic of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin is not just a logic that explains why we make the shaliach chayav. It also may be a logic that explains why we make the sholiach pater. It also may be a logic that explains why we make the sholiach pater. What do I mean? The sholiach or the sholachat says, what do you mean? I didn't think this person was going to listen to me. I told him to do something that was blatantly aser. Divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin. I didn't think they were going to listen to me. Why are you blaming me? Don't make me obligated. I don't have to pay any compensation for any of this. I never thought they would go through with it. Interesting. If that is actually part of the logic of divrei hatalmid, divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin, of getting the sholachat off the hook, are there situations where that doesn't seem to apply? And in fact, there is another conversation in the Rishonim, in Tosfot actually, about that very thing. And the conversation is, I guess, in the following context. If we have an idea that a person could do something that's wrong, but not prosecutable in a human court, chayav b'dinei shamim, but not chayav b'dinei adam. Is it possible that somebody who is a sholiach, who sends someone else to do an avera, might also be chayav b'dinei shamim? Maybe we don't prosecute them in the human court. We don't punish them in the human court. We don't make them pay in the human court. That we leave for the shaliach, because they're not really a shaliach. They're really an independent person who should have done what they were supposed to do. But is it possible that we might say that the sholachat should be chayevet b'dinei shamayim because they did something bad, right? And so that's the discussion that Tosfot are having. And within that discussion comes this question of, well, maybe there's a situation in which the sholachat should have realized that, of course, this person was going to do what they said. They can't make that argument, well, I didn't think they would listen to me because divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomin. Let's take a look. Okay. So the Gemara, or I should say Tosfot rather, is going back to the conversation on Nun Vav Amud Aleph, also in that first shir on Dinei Shamayim, which was, what happens if a person hires two people to be Eidei Sheker, to give false testimony? And we said, in such a case, a person is chayav b'dinei shamayim, but pater midinei adam. They cannot be prosecuted in an earthly court, but they are still culpable in the divine court. So Tosfot say the following: V'dafka socher. It's specifically a person who hires people to be false witnesses, who is chayav b'dinei shamayim. Aval amar. But if the person only said, I want you to go give false testimony, meaning just try to be sholeach, then pater midinei shamayim. Then that person is exempt even from the heavenly court. Why? Disavur shelo yishma'u lo. Because the person figured they're not going to listen to me, right? In other words, if there's a situation in which I can't credibly say I didn't think that they would listen to me, like if I gave people money to testify falsely, that is where we will say, even though I am not chayevet in an earthly court, I'm still chayevet b'dinei shamay. But if it's just a regular situation of I said, hey, go give false testimony, I'm not even chayevet b'dinei shamay because I can say, divrei Rav, divrei Talmud, divrei Mishomin. They shouldn't have listened to me. I never thought they were going to listen to me. Don't be ridiculous, right? So this is kind of an interesting, it's kind of an interesting exception because what it's basically saying is the degree to which a shaliach or a shalachat can deny culpability is parallel to the degree to which they can deny that they had serious influence on these people. So if I can deny that I had serious influence on these people, because all I said was go give false testimony, then I can also argue, come on, they shouldn't have listened to me. I never thought they were going to listen to me. But if I can't really credibly say I have little influence on them because I actually gave them money, I actually gave them motivation to do this, then when you come back to me and say, hey, why did this person do it? I can't just say to you, oh, well, I didn't think they were going to listen to me, so I can't be culpable at all. So instead, I'm going to be culpable b'dinei shamay. I'm still not going to be culpable b'dinei adam, but I'm going to be culpable b'dinei shamay. So it's kind of an interesting kind of middle ground. So our two yotzim min haklal are two situations where divrei Talmud, divrei Rav, divrei Talmud, divrei Mishomer don't apply. The first one is when the shaliach, would-be shaliach, was shogeg, was unwitting, because you can't put the onus on that person that they made the wrong decision. They didn't know that they were doing anything wrong. And our second example is where the sholiach did something that made it very motivating, enticing, and obvious that even though divrei Rav, divrei Talmud, divrei Mishomin, they probably were going to listen to the Talmud because there was something in it for them. And the argument is that in both cases, either ein shaliach l'dvar avera shouldn't apply at all, or even with ein shaliach l'dvar avera, we still want the sholech or the sholachat to be chayav b'dinei shamay. I want to add one last thing before we go, because now that we're on the topic of whether the sholachat should be chayevet b'dinei shamayim in general, because I think that's actually the least intuitive aspect of ein shaliach l'dvar avera. I think it's very easy to say, yeah, of course, ein shaliach l'dvar avera, the person who did the maaseh avera should be punished. But it seems very strange to let the sholech or the sholachat get off scot-free, right? So we saw Tosfot say, okay, there are some situations where we don't let them get off scot-free. We're going to say they're chayav b'dinei shamayim. But the Shach, actually the Siftei Cohen, 17th century Europe, Nosei Kalim on the Shulchan Aruch, the Shach actually says even more broadly, he thinks they're always, the sholachat is always chayevet b'dinei shamayim. Let's take a look at what he says. And with that, we will end. He says, nearly ikar, it seems to me, to le'olam chayav b'dinei shamayim, heicha degorim hezek l'chaveru. A person should always be chayav b'dinei shamayim where if they cause damage to somebody else, right? The English translation of chayav b'dinei shamayim is chayav b'dinei shamayim. That's what we just learned. Afilu lo scharan, even if you didn't hire the false witnesses. Let's see. Really? Even if you didn't hire the false witnesses? That seems strange. In fact, it's more than strange because we even have examples. We looked at the Mishnah from Nun Tet Amud Bet in Bava Kama and saw that if you send an item that can cause fire with a pikeach, then the pikeach has to pay compensation. It doesn't say anything about the sholech being chayav b'dinei shamayim, right? So the shach has to answer that. V'had dekatani hasholech tebe'era biyad pikeach, ha-pikeach chayav. And the fact that the Mishnah in Bava Kama says on Nun Tet Amud Bet, somebody who sends an item that can cause fire in the hands of a pikeach, somebody who's a legally responsible adult, the legally responsible adult is the one who's chayav to pay compensation. V'lo ketani da sholeach chayav b'dinei shamayim, and it doesn't say anything that the sholeach should be chayav b'dinei shamayim, which earlier in that same Mishnah, it mentioned a chiyuv b'dinei shamayim. If it applied here, they would say it. So the Shach says, no, let me explain. I knew that's only because kevan de pikeach mishalim, because the pikeach who did the damage is going to pay the money to lo shayach dinei shamayim al mishalech. There is no dinei shamayim left. Dinei shamayim is for who's responsible to compensate, right? And because somebody is already compensating for the damages, that's why the person who sent them is not chayav b'dinei shamayim. Doesn't mean they didn't do something wrong, but it certainly does mean that in a situation where either nobody's paying the damages or it's not about paying damages, but it's about something else, the shaliach or the shalachat would always be chayav b'dinei shamayim. So what we looked at here essentially was not accepting the excuse of, well, somebody else told me to do it, except in a few cases that the Torah spells out. One of those cases being a situation where somebody stole an animal, gave it to somebody else to slaughter, and that's only because of the way that the pasuk itself is worded. But then we looked at the logic behind why is it that we don't accept the idea that a person might say, well, somebody else put me up to this. And we saw that the logic possibly is about both the shaliach really being guilty for doing the wrong thing. They should have known better not to listen to a person, but to listen to God's law. And it's also potentially about the shaliach being able to have plausible deniability of, I didn't think they'd listen to me. Who would listen to me and go against Torah law? And using that logic, we saw two examples where maybe that logic doesn't seem to apply, either because the situation was that the shaliach was shogeg and didn't know all of the background details, and therefore didn't know that they were transgressing divrei harav, or the situation was where the shaliach did more than just say, hey, go do this transgressive thing. The shaliach added incentives like money. And therefore the shaliach can't say, I never thought they would listen to me, because after all, who would break the law this way? You paid them, right? And then we end with the question of general culpability of the shaliach in a situation of ein shaliach devar avera, noting that it seems that the Balei Tosfot are not willing to suggest that the shaliach is always chayav b'dinei shamayim, only in the cases where they had that special motivation and ein shaliach devar avera doesn't apply. Whereas the Shach basically says anytime there is a transgression and the either the compensation is not going to be paid by someone else, or it's not about compensation, but it's about punishment, there is always that חיוב בדיני shamayim for the shaliach. So let that be a lesson to all of us. Try not to be someone's shaliach l'dvar avera, and try not to be shaliach somebody l'dvar avera. Thanks.